Hey everybody, we are back today for quite an in-depth lesson, very much a definitive guide on how to play thirds. So thirds are a useful method for enhancing the melodies that we compose, and they effectively double up on the sound. Of course, one is playing one melody while another is playing something else entirely, just a little bit further up or down in the scale. So first what we'll do is look at the basic thirds in their forms across the strings. Then we're going to have a few exercises where we put that into practice. And then finally, we're going to look at a couple of examples that make very good use of these sounds and turn them into something that I would describe as very majestic sounding. As far as exploring the thirds go, we can do this on each set of two strings. So we've got 6/5, 5/4, 4/3, 3/2, and 2/1. Today we'll be concentrating mainly on the third and the second string and the fifth and the fourth string. But I'm going to guide you on how to play each form across all sets of strings. It's actually very easy to remember. As far as the first exercise go, we're going to be on the third and the second string. And this is important because the third and the second string, because of the tuning between the two, is a little bit different to the rest of the other two sets of strings. So the shapes are going to look a little bit different. If we look at the first shape, we have the minor third, and this is the E note and the G note. Fret 9 on the third, fret 8 on the second string. If we play them together in exercise 1, we're simply going to be playing through these like this. And you'll notice that the majority of these are going to be minor thirds, and there's going to be one major third. So the major third difference is that if we were to keep in the same position, this note being the third, this note being the root note, this note's going to go up a semitone or a half step or one fret on the guitar. So putting that into practice over on the G note, so we have the G note at fret 12 on the third string, and we have the B note at fret 12 on the second string. And effectively these then are at the same fret. So we have 12th fret on third, 12th fret on second. It almost sounds like an ambulance or a siren from the old days in one of those silly movies. On that set of strings, that's effectively the two shapes that you have. On the other sets of strings, they're going to look a bit different. And so if we look at the second exercise, we'll see this in practice. So for the minor third, we're going to have a situation where the root note is what it is, whatever fret it may be. So in this case, 7th on the 5th. But the minor third this time is going to be back an extra semitone, and in this case, it'll be the 5th fret on string 4. So the minor third is going to look like this. Later on, when we play the G note and its third, it's going to be a major third. So if we go over to the G note at fret 12 on the 5th, we're going to have the major third, which is the B note, and it's going to be at fret 9. So one interesting thing about this, and it can be a little bit confusing at times, is that the major third on the majority of these sets of strings actually looks like the minor third on the third and the second string, but it is in fact a major third. So we have 10th fret and 9th fret, 5th string, 4th string. Now, every other set of strings is going to use those two versions of the third, the minor and the major third, in those as well. So just to look at a brief couple of examples on the other sets. So if we're on the 6th string and we move that E note over to fret 12, then we're going to play exactly the same shape, just on a different set of strings. So we have E at 12 on the 6th and G at 10 on the 5th. So same thing as what we did on the 5th and the 4th string. But the major third, moving that over to 15 on the 6th and then 14 on the 5th string, again is exactly the same as what we did on the 5th and the 4th string. And even if we went on to the second and the first string, we could do the exact same thing. So we have the E note on the second string and the G note at fret 3 on the first string. Move over to the G note. The notes this time are next door to each other, not separated by a fret. So we have 8 on 2, 7 on 1. And then even on the 4th and the 3rd string, exactly the same situation. So if we play the E note at 14 on the 4th string, and then the G note minor third will be at 12 on the 3rd. Move down to the G note at fret 5 on the 4th, fret 4 for the 3rd, the major third on the 3rd string. And that's basically the minor and the major thirds in their shapes in a nutshell. So now all we've got to do is learn them within a more musical context. So that's what the exercises are for. So examples 1 and 2 are going to make use of the shapes that we just learnt, and we're focusing firstly on the third and the second string, and then the fifth and the fourth string. So what I'd encourage you to do after that is to move all these over onto, like I did in the extra run through that I did, as many different areas on the neck as you can. So what you'll need for that is your note names. So look out in the resources section on the pinned post, because I'm pretty sure in there's going to be the note names sheet, which you can use to learn those if you haven't already done so. Let's have a playthrough of example 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now let's do example 2. Up to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So for the third example, we're going to be looking at ostinatos, and an ostinato is just simply a short repeating rhythm or phrase. In this case, just a bunch of notes, and it's actually just going to keep repeating itself within the bar. There's groups of 3. And what I've done here is I've actually labeled the beginning note. And in the previous example, actually, when you look at the transcription, I've labeled what the major and the minor thirds are so that you can identify those as you play through them. So check that out as well. So in this case, we're going to be starting on the notes E and F sharp to start with, and we'll also be utilizing the F sharp, the A, and the B note. The ostinato just on E, F sharp, and G, if we just kept repeating that, would sound like this. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to move it up to create interest and some, more interesting sounds, basically. So we're going to go from the E note to the F sharp, back to the E, then up to the G, and then we're going to go to B, descend to G, and then the F sharp and resolve back to the E. So I'm going to play that now so that you can check it out, and then I'm going to show you how to move everything up into the major and minor thirds. After 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Notice at the end we resolve to the E note, the note that we started from. That's very important when you're writing music because it gives it a beginning, which you start out with, and then an ending. Of course, there's always exceptions to those rules. In fact, there are quite many exceptions to this case, but in the case of exercises, it's always good to have a pretty standard approach so that you can identify and hear what's going on. Now, as far as moving everything up, I've attached a scale diagram sheet, or at least note name sheet, so you'll be able to check that out, with all of the E minor notes labeled on the guitar fretboard as a diagram, so you can actually check that out and do this for yourself, starting from basically any note. But the general idea is, the exact idea in fact, is to play the note first that you want to get the third of. And you can do this on one string initially. It's the easiest way to do it. So in this case, the E note. Then we simply move up 2 extra notes from that point, a total of 3 notes, and we get the third. So for example, E would have the third of G, E, F sharp, G. And when we move up to F sharp, we would just do the same thing, F sharp, G, A. So our third for E is G, and our third for F sharp is A. And in fact, you can do this on your hand if you'd like. Just do it by the alphabet. E, F sharp, G, 1, 2, 3, back to the F sharp, G, A. And of course, the only stumbling block is knowing the accidentals. And in this case, in the E minor scale, we only have F sharp. All the rest are natural notes. So effectively then, each of the other starting points, we can just use the same method. So if we start on the G note at fret 8 on the second string, our third would be B, G, A, B. Going up to B, it would be B, C, D. So B and D, and that's a minor third. Also notice that you can actually see the intervallic distance very good on one string. So a minor third is a total width of 4 frets, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when we get to the G note, it's actually a total of 5 frets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So on one string, very easy to see. And in fact, we've already been through the shapes on the adjacent strings. So they're pretty easy to identify as well. Let's play the exercise now of the harmony ostinato, starting at fret 8 on the second string. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're going to skip over the harmonizing ostinatos, and instead I'm going to simply play that as a performance, and you will see me do it first starting from the 5th fret on the root note E, and then you'll also see me doing it from the G note on the same string. So lastly, we come to the hardest, most difficult part, but it's a lot of fun and it'll give you a bit of a challenge. And I've deliberately done this in a way that only uses 2 strings so that you really do kind of challenge yourself seeing those thirds in action rather than doing them more in a kind of box position. So the first idea is going to start on the F sharp note. So we don't always start on the root note. And it's going to work like this. So the best way to do this is just for me to break up each little sequence so that you can see where the notes are and how they work. But the good news is that these all use the same rhythm. So once you learn the rhythm for one sequence, they apply to each of the other sequences. And there'll be effectively 2 lots of the sequence per bar. So the first one begins at fret 7, and it's going to look and sound like this. After 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all we're going to do in this sequence, and in fact in the other sequences, we're going to keep the rhythm and the general intervallic structure, although the intervals do change a little bit because of where the notes are and where they start and so on. But all you've got to remember is that if one note moves up just one note in the scale, then all the other notes are only going to move the exact same distance. So F sharp was our starting point. Then we moved to G and back to F sharp. So in the next sequence, we're starting on G. Now, bearing in mind that each note's only moving up one other step in the scale at a time, the G would move to A and back to G. So F sharp, G, F sharp, G, A, G. All we have to remember is that each of these notes is going to move up exactly the same amount from wherever that is. If F sharp moves to G, then G would move to A, and so on and so forth. So let's have a look at the second sequence, starting at fret 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you'll notice then that we move back to the previous sequence that we looked at first up, and then we're going to change it, so we're going to start on the G note. And remembering what I just talked about, the G is moving from its point, so from that where the F sharp started before, but remembering only moving up by one step in the scale each time. So when we start on G, keeping that in mind, the next note's going to move up just one note as well, so that would be the B note, and then we go back to G. And then we just keep doing that for the rest of the sequence. Let's have a listen to that. And each of the other sequences is going to follow the same format. So what I'm going to do now is play the whole thing of example F, which is Majestic Melody 1. So be very slow about it, coming in up to 6. And remember, you can use Sound Slice to slow it down more if you would like, or if it's too slow, you can speed it up. You can also loop as much or as little of the sequence as you would like. So let's do that now. So in the harmony sequence, we are going to do obviously in thirds. So F sharp becomes A, and everything else is going to move up the exact amount. So whereas we went to G from the F sharp, from the A note, we're going to go to B. And that follows the sequence and the method that I was talking about earlier. Let's have a look at the first sequence in bar 1, the harmony sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Also, just a quick note that you'll notice some of the notes are sounding abrupt and choppy, and that's staccato, and that's indicated by the dot just above the note in the transcription. So when it sounds like this, that's staccato. Let's move into the second sequence from fret 12. Then we move back to the one we started with, and then when we do the fourth sequence in this bit, we're going to start at, let's see, I think fret 13. Yep. And then it gets a little bit different. We have to move right up to the 19th fret to end with. There's a couple of ways you can fret it up. I will sometimes use my third and pinky finger, but I think I'm just going to use my index and middle this time, and let's check that out. And then we simply move down each step in the scale each time we do it. So whereas we started at 19, then we're going to start at 17, and then 15, and then from there. Let's do from 17. Then we're going to move down to 15. 13. So the last example's actually much easier than the first example. Got a real definite pattern to it. Much easier to see too, because this time we're in more of a box framework for it. So we start on the root note to begin with, and we're going to begin by going from the root to the octave, and then we're going to play back through the scale, and it's going to look like this. This is the first bar of example Majestic Melody 2, example G. Only that we move up to the F sharp for the second run through in that bar. In the next bar, we're going to do what we started out with, and then we're going to move the starting point up to G, and that's similar to what we've been doing with the other sequences. Finishing off, we're going to begin from the B note, then we're going to move into the A note, the G note, the F sharp, and resolve to the root. Let's have a listen to that. So all in all, you can see that that's much easier to visualize, see, and play. Let's harmonize it now. I'm going to do a full playthrough of the harmony part at a slower tempo. Let's do that now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that wraps things up. So have fun with it, and I'll see you soon for another lesson on another day. Until then, bye for now.